Okay. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. It's Chosar learning. We should have basic Mikdash immediately. Today we're going to start Memvav Amar Aleph by the Mishnah, right after the Mishnah by the Gemara. Okay. Remember what we learned in the Mishnah? We're learning about partners. That partners that took a vow not to have benefit one from another. So they weren't allowed to go into the common courtyard, according to the Tanakama. According to Rabbi Ben Yaakov, they were. We explained that the difference between the Tanakama and Rabbi Ben Yaakov was if they accepted the concept of Breira, that is it considered divided already retroactively because of what could be done later. Right. So do we say that because this is the part of the courtyard that he went into, that means that's actually his? Do we say that?
Yeah, spoke about property. Someone has.
Right. Okay. So now the Gemara asks like this: they have a question. The Nidre Pligi. Like this here is when each one took a vow not to have benefit from the other one. Now, what the Gemara is about to suggest is that maybe the machlokes is not really if yesh breira or ein breira. Do we say that it's divided, even though it hasn't been divided yet? Do we say that each person is going strictly into his own portion of this property? That's not the discussion yet. Rather, everyone agrees yesh breira, that there's no problem with walking into the courtyard. The only problem is that we don't like that the person took a vow, so the Tanakama creates a knas on him. You took a vow that you're forbidding yourself benefit from the other person, so therefore we put a knas, we put a restriction on him. Now you're not allowed to go into the courtyard because you're playing with things. Let's take a look.
It's like choice, no?
Right. Breira, instead of meaning as choice, Breira means that it's been divided already, like to separate. It's been separated already. What part is yours and what part is? So now the question would be, let's say the person didn't take a vow on his own. They didn't take a vow that he is forbidding himself. Each person took a vow that the other person is forbidden from him. The difference now is like this. Let's take a look. The Gemara spells it out. Mi amrinan, do we say ben nidrehu de pligi, that the machlekes over here was just about when he took a vow forbidding himself? And what was the machlekes? Do we put a knas on him or not? Because everyone would hold yesh breira. Aval bidir zeh. But when each one took a vow forbidding the other person, the Rabbanon would agree to Rabbi Ben Yaakov. For sure, we're not going to put a knas on. Look, there's Reuven and Shimon. If Reuven takes a vow, I'm forbidden to have benefits from you, he says to Shimon. And Shimon says to Reuven, I'm forbidden to have benefits from you. And then, according to the Tanakama, they can't go into the common property, common area. The knas. Each one took a vow on himself. Why'd you do that? Even though yesh breira, when they walk into the property, they're walking into their own area. However, let's say each one did not take a vow forbidding himself. Each one took a vow forbidding the other person from having benefit from his property. So Reuven takes a vow, Shimon, you can't have benefit. My property to you is like a sacrifice. And Shimon takes a vow to Reuven saying, my property to you, Reuven, is like a sacrifice. So now it's Shimon that's imposing the restriction on Reuven, and Reuven that's imposing the restriction on Shimon. So then what are we going to do? Well, we're going to say that, Reuven, you can't go into the property according to the Tanakama because we're going to put a fine on you. He didn't do anything wrong. It was Shimon that imposed the prohibition on him. If Reuven imposed it on himself, then we could say we could put a fine on them. But if this restriction, if this prohibition is being imposed by the other person, I mean, you can't fine him. It's the other guy. But the truth is, they're both doing it. Don't let that confuse you. They're both doing it, but to the other guy. Right? Reuven is imposing the vow on Shimon, and Shimon is imposing the vow on Reuven. So do we say over there that everyone agrees that it's permissible to go into the property because each one is going into their own area? And there's no reason to put a knas on someone that didn't do anything wrong. Or do we say or do we say that no? Maybe the machlekes really is the way we're explaining it the whole time. Yesh breira or ein breira. And even if they didn't do anything wrong, the question is, are they really allowed to go into the common area? Are they entering into the other person's property or the rights that the other person has to that property? Okay. Tashma, come and listen. We're going to bring a proof. Quoting the Mishnah. It says, if one of them was forbidden by the other, he was mudar hana, he was the recipient of the vow. The other person vowed that he cannot have benefit from him. So Shimon takes a vow that his possessions are forbidden unto Reuven. And we say over there that the rabbis argue, the Tanakama argues, which means that obviously it's not a fine that's imposed on Reuven. It argues mean that the rabbis there forbid him from going into the common area, and Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov permits it.
But it would be different if he says, I'm forbidden from you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm forbidden from you would be a reason to put a fine on him. Because we could say, why do you take that vow? Now, because you took that vow, we're gonna, but we can't tell him, Reuven, why did Shimon take that vow? Because, okay. Gemara says that it's not a perfect proof, although the words seem good, but Tani Nadar Mechavere Hana. And it says mudar, it doesn't have to mean that he's only the recipient of the vow. It could mean that he's the recipient of the vow because he took the vow. It could mean that as well.
So it could be moder.
Right. It could mean, right. We would say neider, hana, right. Neider instead of mudar. Yeah. Hachanam mistabra. This also makes sense. Tani Seifa, because it says later on in the Mishnah, we force the person that took the vow to sell his portion.
He created the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how the if we say that he was the one that created the problem, so he's the one that took the vow. That's why we force him to sell his portion, so not to create problems for the friend. But if we say that the friend took the vow forbidding this fellow, Shimon took the vow forbidding Reuven from going inside. My kaifan, I say, why do we force Reuven to sell his property? That would be totally unfair.
Yeah.
If Shimon takes a vow that his possessions cannot give benefit to Reuven, and that we force Reuven to sell.
He didn't really make the vow.
He didn't even make the vow. Amena sanis. He was how do they translate that? He was beyond his control. Beyond his control. Yeah. Discussion here in the round, which you mentioned before, that the Rambam says that they actually forced the person that took the vow not the person that's the recipient of the vow, which doesn't fit with this Gemara. And that's the Ravid's question on the Rambam.
It's just with the explanation that he takes. Yes, he's the one who's forced to sell because he's the one who created the problem.
No, yeah, because he was the one that created the problem. Right? And it does fit with Yerushalmi. That's the thing. This may be a support for that. No, we have questions about why the Rambam rules in certain ways. A lot of times the answer that they give is that, well, the Yerushalmi goes that way, and the Rambam chose the Yerushalmi over the Bavli. That wouldn't fit with the other rule. The Rif was the one that said that we always choose the Bavli over the Yerushalmi. The Rambam maybe would hold differently, but other scholars want to say that the Rambam is not really ruling like the Yerushalmi over the Bavli. It's really ruling like the Mishnah. Which shot is most clearly read into the Mishnah?
You're saying the Rif said to rule how?
The Rif says that we always rule like the Bavli over the Yerushalmi, and maybe the Rambam doesn't hold of that.
Really?
That would be.
He wasn't the only codifier at the time.
Right.
That extracted the
Right. Okay. The Gemara is left unresolved. We don't have an answer. Okay. Amar Rabba. Amar Zeiri. Rabba says the name of Zeiri. When you translate the names, it comes out a little funny. Rabba, the great, says in the name of the small. That's the anyway. That's just the name. Says machlekes sheyesh ba kedei chaluka. Discussion over here is when there is in the two properties, not in the two properties, in the one property, enough for both of them if they would want to divide it. Kedei chaluka is that they should each get dalet amas by dalet amas. It's the common area. As a minimum, right, would each be able to get 16 square feet, square amas, 16 square amas. But if it wasn't large enough, just a very small area, then they can't impose on one another to divide it. If there's
certain size, but it's too small.
It's too small, they can't divide it. So then Divrei HaKolmot, everyone would hold that it's permissible. So the logic for this, one would hold that he can walk into the property. It's not considered that he's going into the other person's property. The logic for this would have to be the way that we discussed it in the Ran before. This is a little bit different than most cases of Breira. Usually Breira is that because at a later point, we're going to divide it. So we're going to consider it divided already from now. And we're going to consider it divided in the way that it's being used now. Since later on it's going to be divided, so we'll already go back and we'll say that the way that they're using it now is that division. Now, the truth is maybe he's using the whole courtyard, the whole common area. We'll say, well, that division was time, something that you owned it for this time. We had ways of making it that it doesn't have to be exactly the space or area, or each dot gets divided into two, But the Ran then said that over here, it's not that we're dividing it later. We're saying that as of now, it's not that something's going to happen later, and then we're going to go back like we did by the Erev. Whichever side the Chacham is going to come to, that's the side that the Erev should take place. So something actually later is going to happen, and we're going to say retroactively that's what we had by Bein Hashmashas. Remember, we didn't know which side of the city the Chacham was going to come to, and he made an Erev on each side. We said, tomorrow he came. Um, so that's really what it is. Tomorrow he comes to the east. So we said that the Erev that he put on the east is the real Erev. Okay, so that was retroactive.
Yeah.
That was the main one. Over here, we're not dividing it later. We're saying that this is it as of now. It's not something later. Then they both own it, and they both own it like this, that each one gets it for the time that they're using it. And that's how it's being shared.
This is just land. It's not.
Yeah, it's just a common area.
Not dividing a house.
So if it could be a house, but here, if there are partners in the house, but here, what's happening like this? If it's yesh b'kedei chalukah, then maybe later on it's going to be divided, and then I'm going to look back at it and say retroactively, how was it divided? Then I'm dealing with a regular case of breira. Do I say retroactive that the division that would take place later is already taking place now? And each one is going into his own share of this property. But if there is no kedei chalukah, if it's not large enough to divide it, then all I'm doing is looking at as it's divided as of now. And what does each one own of it as of now? And it's not a retroactive type of breira. So then we would say that even the rabbis agree that it's already divided, that it's already considered separated. It's not something that would take place in the future that I go backwards. I'm looking at it as it is right now. And each one has his own part of this property. We'll say that it would be permissible for them to go in. That would be the logic here. The Gemara is going to switch it, but any question?
Yeah. If someone gives their wife a get, does that retroactively create this division also in property? Is that a vow as well when it comes to one's personal?
No,
space?
I don't think so. When he gives her a get, there are some monetary rules that kick in, but
That doesn't create a situation where someone can't keep benefit.
right.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah. Every get is different. Okay. Amalei Rav Yosef. Rabbi Sakneses, the Kamisha Imba Kedei Chalukah Dami, Tanan Shnei Masurim B'Davar Shleisiyah. We quote the Mishnah later on. There's a Mishnah in Mem Ches. That's a Mem Zion. That if each one forbids his portion on the other one, like hektish, like a cherem, so then things that were that were owned by the city, for example, basic Knesses, they were not allowed to go in. Each one was not allowed to go in because each one owned part of it. So that was what the Rabbi Yosef is suggesting, is that this is very similar to something that's impossible to divide, because they don't divide that up by the people of the city. It's something that's never going to be divided. And if it's something that's never going to be divided, then you can see each person should be going into his own portion as of now. And we don't say that. We say that it's actually prohibited. So this creates a question on this logic. And Elam Rav Yosef, Amar Ziri, Rav Yosef says in the name of Ziri. Now we switched. Before it was Rabba in the name of Ziri. Now it's Rav Yosef in the name of Ziri. Rabba and Rav Yosef are friends. Yeah, contemporaries. He says, Machlekes she'ein ba kedei chalukah. The machlekes is exactly the opposite. Machlekes is when there is no ability to divide it because it's too small. But if it is possible to be divided, then everyone holds that it's prohibited.
What's the threshold exactly of
How big it is?
Yeah.
So it's 4 amos by 4 amos. So each one needs to be able to get those 4 amos.
Almost like a meter.
An amma is about 1.5 feet. It'd be like 6 feet by 6 feet.
4 months by 4 months.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure 100% what's the logic of this, why it has to be like that. The Ran says that since originally when if it has a Kedei Chalukah, since originally when they bought it, they were planning that maybe they would divide it. No one bought the whole, no one bought the whole thing. There's 2 portions here. There's clearly 2 portions. In the other case, we would say that they each bought the whole thing to use the whole thing. Over here, they each bought it to use half of it because it's ready to be divided. So then we would say that it's prohibited to go into it until it's divided, because you're actually going in clearly into the other person's portion, because he clearly has a portion here. It's not that you each bought the whole thing. If you go back to how we wanted to discuss it, what is the meaning of partnership? Partnership, each one owns everything. Whereas partnership, each one owns half. Which way do you slice it? So the way we're doing it now is that if each one owns half, then that creates a problem on going into the other person's half.
Sometimes it's not even half.
Right, depends on the partnership, right? So it's better, at least Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, he's the one that says that it's permissible to go inside. He would say that it's only permissible to go inside to that property if each one owns the whole thing. And then you could say that I'm going into the whole thing. Why would I say I'm going into my part? That would be because it's too small to divide. So then I'm going into my part.
These are very real problems. There are lots of old legal cases about this particular subject. I mean, American law.
Here, though, it's being discussed because of a vow. I assume that in common law, it's based on other things. Can I put my things down here? And the guy says no. And what do you mean? It's my property.
It often ended up being based on inheritance.
Right.
How do you divide up the property?
Right.
What if you keep dividing it up, it becomes too small for each person?
Right. Well, that was the Gemara Bava Basra. Good, good, right? Isn't that the case?
Yeah.
Either you take the property and pay me off, or I'll take it and pay it. Okay. Amar Rav Huna halacha Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rav Huna says that the halacha is like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And B'chein Amar Rabbi Elazar halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Elazar also says halacha like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So both in Bavel and in Eretz Yisrael, they're paskening like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Okay. Go to the next piece of the Mishnah. The Mishnah over here said that if someone prohibits his friend from having benefit from him, or that doesn't have to be the case. Could be he prohibits himself from having benefit from his friend. Is mudar hana mechaverai, right? Well, if his friend owns a bathhouse or a wine or oil press, but that wine and oil press was already rented out. Someone else is using it now. But is this person that's now forbidden because of a vow, is he allowed to go into it? Because the actual owner is someone that he's not allowed to have benefit from. So we said that he is allowed to, unless the owner still has some rights to it. If the owner has rights to it, his tfisas yad, he's still grabbing onto something, he's still holding on to something, then it would be prohibited. So now the Gemara asks, the kama tfisas yad. What does it mean tfisas yad? What is he holding on to? Well, Rav Nachman lemechtas l'shel arviyah. If he's holding on to part of the profits, it means the way he rented it out is he tells the person that's renting it, he says, you can use it, but I want to get half, a third, or a quarter of the profits that come in. Right. Shirka.
He's a renter or is he a business? Like, is he an owner?
There's an owner.
He's the.
There is an owner here. Let's call the owner Shimon. He's
Okay.
renting it to Levi,
Uh-huh.
but Reuven is not allowed to have benefit from Shimon. Now, what does Levi? Shimon is the owner. Levi is the renter, and Reuven is this guy on the side that's not allowed to have benefit from Shimon. Well, Levi is the one that's renting this property. Only thing is that Shimon is getting benefit from Levi's use of the property because he actually gets profit, part of the profits. So if that's the case, and if Reuven wants to go and use it, then he's not allowed to have benefit. See, if he would not be allowed to give benefit to him, then maybe we would say that he's giving benefit by paying, by him getting some of the profit. But here we're just saying that he's considered an owner. Here we're saying that not that he's giving benefit. Reuven's getting the benefit, but he's getting benefit from something that Shimon owns.
The renter and Shimon's the owner, and then Levi is the one that's gaining benefit.
Reuven and Shimon are the ones that don't. No, they don't want to get benefit from each other. That's my examples. In this case, Reuven isn't allowed to get benefit from Shimon, but Levi is the one that's in the property now. So we consider Shimon still the owner because he's getting benefit from it, the proceeds. Okay, now the next words are aval bibatzer loy, but if it's less than that, then we won't consider him an owner. He's the owner, but we don't consider him that he still has a handle on it. Less than a quarter. The Ran has a different girsa here. Instead of the butzer, he says aval bebeitzim loy, but the eggs not. Now apparently they had, like today they have soda machines, outside different stores or different things they have outside the gym. They have a snack machine. Back then they had an egg machine. They sold eggs outside. So he says, but if all he would get was that he would sell the eggs outside what would be a concession stand or something, so then that would not be considered that he's an owner. That he is the owner, but that would not be considered that he has a handle on it that would prohibit Reuven from going in there. He just has this other business going on by the people that are going into it. Yeah, that seems to be the shot over here, that he's selling eggs as the people go in. It's not, since it's not part of the bathhouse or whatever it is, so then it's not considered that he has a handle on it that would prohibit Reuven from entering. He's making money from it, but not directly from it, indirectly from it. Okay. Abaya Amar afilu bebatzer aser. Abaya says no. Even if it's no, they have the two pshatim again. Even if it's less than a quarter, it's still prohibited because he's considered the owner. Or even if he's getting money from the concession stand that's outside, that would also be prohibited. So then in what case would it be considered permissible? The Gemara says the Mekabel Betaska, when he's just paying a yearly tax. So if he doesn't get anything routinely, if he doesn't get anything, not routinely, it's either by how much earnings come in, he just gets a flat fee for the year. So then that would not be considered that he has a handle on it, and Reuven would be allowed to go into it, even though he can't go into things from Shimon, but it would be considered the renters, not Shimon's. Yeah. Okay. There's different ways of learning this. Okay, let's go to the next piece. It's a big rock here, I'm skipping. He says, your house is forbidden for me to enter like a sacrifice. Okay. So what was the rule? The rule was that he wasn't allowed to enter it while he was alive, or while he still owned it. But once the person died or sold it, then the owner died or sold it, then it wasn't considered his house anymore, and he was allowed to enter it. As long as he sold it to someone else, I couldn't sell it to him. So boy Avimi has a question. Kainam lebayazeh she'ata nichnas. See, what happened in the last case was I have to add in one detail. If he says your house that I don't want to enter, that it's prohibited for me to enter, then it's only while he owns it. But if he says this house, then it's prohibited forever. Even if it changes owners or the person died, then it's still prohibited to Reuven to enter because he didn't say that it's only while it's Shimon's house. He said this house.
You can't say this house is prohibited unless he owns it. He's
No,
just saying
he can
someone
say
else's house.
he can say prohibited on himself even if he doesn't own
Oh,
it. Excuse me. Okay. So he can prohibit. This is a general rule. He can prohibit anything on himself, and he can prohibit anything that he owns on someone else. He can't prohibit something that he doesn't own on someone else. So now, Boy Avimi has a question. Let's say he says he prohibits someone else. Shimon says that Reuven, you can't enter this house. At that point, Shimon owned the house. But he doesn't say my house. He says this house. So now, do we say that because at the time that he took the vow, Shimon owned that house, he was able to prohibit it on him, even forever? Oh, because the vow did take effect while he owned it. Or do we say that no, that whole difference between your house or this house was only a difference on the person that was taking the vow for himself? But the difference between your house or this house is not going to make a difference when the person that's taking the vow is not taking the vow on himself, he's imposing the vow on someone else. So do we say like this? What would be the din if Shimon then dies or he sells the house? Can a person prohibit something that's in his property, that it should be prohibited, that's in his possession, that it should be prohibited even after it leaves his possession, beyond his ownership, beyond his rights? I would assume right away that the answer is no. How does he have the rights to do that?
says this.
He says this, right?
Regardless of-
But he doesn't own. He doesn't own the other person, and he doesn't own the object after he sells it or dies.
And he's, yeah, I see, because he's doing it, he's prohibiting it
It's
on
been
someone
on
else.
someone else.
Yeah.
Like putting a curse on something. Is that effective
It's no
after
longer-
the pirate dies?
Uh-huh.
Sells it.
Amar Rava says Tashima. If someone tells his son, Kainam Shiyatananali. Does that mean that I won't have benefit from you? Or that he won't have benefit? The son shouldn't have benefit from the father?
Yeah.
Iyata, that you cannot have benefit from me. It's really, it says li a lot of times, and it means me many. Nana li means benefit, it really means benefit from me. Umes, and then he passes away. Yerashenu, he still inherits. He still inherits because after he passed away, it's not his. He died, so it leaves his possession, it goes to the son. Let's say he adds in the words that you cannot have benefit from me while I'm alive and after I die. Umace, and then he dies. Layer Sheno, he doesn't inherit. Now the Ran makes a big deal. He does inherit. He can't really have benefit from that inheritance. He doesn't. It does get divided amongst the brothers as if he gets a portion. This doesn't. It's not a monetary law. It's a ritual law here. It's a neder that's coming into effect. Whatever the case is, see what just happened? He took a vow, and he was able to make it prohibited on his son, even after it belongs to him. Even after it's not the father's anymore. He was still able to make it prohibited. We see that it works.
Is there any distinction between like the neder and actual legal documents here? Because
Yeah.
sometimes it could
Yeah. In the ownership on the title and the deed, it's going to say that it belongs to the son. It's just the son has a problem dealing with this because he's not allowed to have benefit for it.
He can hold the property taxes. He can't use it.
Right. Where did Ran say over here?
and that's if it was
You can do that. You can do that.
I knew somebody who inherited the building. And the building had so much taxes on it. But he didn't want to inherit it. He tried to figure out how to disinherit himself. Disinherit himself so the state would view it as he never inherited. I mean, I don't know how it ended up, but I remember the problem. He didn't want the building.
They carried the obligation of the back taxes or whatever else. So in that case, it was a burden on the plus. That's not bad.
Sure,
Passing all my debts to
there
you.
was no hana. He couldn't have, just like every kid had no hana, but he had couldn't have hana, but he had ownership.
that's different if it's a vow.
I'm just saying the situation was similar
Yeah.
to this.
Oh, so we're dealing with past. You cannot receive a benefit from something. Right? You say you cannot receive a benefit, a penalty,
Detriment.
a detriment.
Yeah.
Giving you all my debts. Thank you very much, Father. I owe all these guys $1 million, and it goes to you. You do that?
Pass on your debts.
Yeah.
So Torah law, debts are an obligation of the estate rather than the son.
It should have both aspects though. Because if the estate doesn't exist, would they have to pay? Really?
If the father was a local, borrowed money, he died owing money.
Right.
There's not enough in the estate to pay for it. It's not an obligation. So he
Uh-huh.
never agreed to it.
Interesting. Okay, let me take a look over here.
But you know, the estate
And
can get
Zion.
cleaned up, so the son doesn't get anything.
Right.
Paying for that.
Okay, Tanan Hassan.
So are you saying like that's transferable from a person who passes? Is that it's you're saying it's kind of optional, like
Well, it may be
you
moral,
avoid it?
a moral obligation on the son. And that's the discussion in halakha, but it's not really halakha that he's obligated to repay. He never borrowed the money. He didn't benefit from it. He never.
I know, but the money that was borrowed was used to pay for his swimming pool.
Possibly.
His car and his house.
Okay.
and Sell it.
It goes like this. Tanan Hassan. Kainam Periselu alai. Someone says that these fruits are prohibited to me. Kainam Hain Alpi. They're prohibited to my mouth. Or Kainam Hain Lifi to my mouth. What's the difference? Alpi and Alpi? I'm not sure. How do they translate it there?
It is konam konam upon my mouth, or it is konam for my mouth.
Is there a difference? There's that. I guess I mean that they can't eat it. Same thing, right? Either case, they can't eat it. Well, what happens now is Asr b'chilufayim. He can't even have benefit from these fruits from their exchange. If he exchanged these fruits for anything, for money or for something, because he made these fruits like a sacrifice, he can't have benefit from even what this is exchanged for. Ubigadulayim, and if he plants them, then he can't get benefit from the growths. Now, this is exactly the way it works by hektish. That if you plant something from that you consecrated, then what grows from that is also considered hektish. Okay. Boy, Rami Barchama. Rami Barchama asks a question. Amar kainim peres elo al plaini. Let's say he prohibits these fruits not on himself, he prohibits them on someone else. What's going to be the din when it comes to not the fruits themselves, but what they're exchanged for? It goes like this. Mi amrinan. Do we say Hayel va'adam iser peres chavera alatzmai? Because a person could take a vow that he's not going to eat his friend's fruits, right? Reuven can take a vow that he's not going to eat the fruits of Shimon. And Adam Aiser Davar Shlai Balayla. A person can also take a vow that he's not going to not only have the fruits of Shimon, but he's not even going to have the exchange of the fruits of Shimon, or what grows from the fruits of Shimon, even though that doesn't exist right now, because they haven't been exchanged yet and they haven't been planted yet.
Well, if someone says a general statement like these fruits are konam, can't have it.
Right. Right. What happens when they're exchanged? Can he have what they're exchanged for? So we just said that it's prohibited to have what they're exchanged for.
Yeah.
That's because he was the one taking the vow on himself. But let's say he takes the vow that someone else cannot have benefit from these. So this is like a follow-up of the previous discussion. Previous discussion was that can a person make something prohibited on someone else after he owns it? That was the last discussion.
Yeah.
Now the discussion is, can he make something prohibited on someone else, not after he owns it, but on the profits or what comes from this after this thing is not here, whether either because it's exchanged or because he planted it.
Can we arrive to another exact conclusion?
Yeah. We said that if he was allowed to, because the father can prohibit the benefits on his son even after he passes away. So if that's the case, then maybe the same thing should apply over here. Do we say that just like a person can prohibit the fruits of his friend on himself, and he can prohibit on himself the exchange and the growths of those fruits? Do we say Gabi Chaverai regarding Gabi Chaverai Hayal ve'ena demaisa peres Chaverai al Chaverai? He can't prohibit his friend's fruits on his friend. He can prohibit his friend's fruits on himself. He can prohibit his fruits on his friend. His fruits on himself for sure. Can he prohibit his friend's fruits on his friend? The answer is no. So maybe because he can't prohibit what's not his on someone else, so therefore we're comparing here what's not his, what he doesn't own, to things that don't exist. But the only thing is that before our answer was that things that you don't own, you can still prohibit on someone else. But that was only because while you owned it, you were able to prohibit it, and then it would continue after you owned it, that you were able to prohibit, like the father can make it prohibited on the son even after he dies. But over here, he wants to prohibit fruits that he doesn't own. His friends, he wants to prohibit.
He doesn't own it now. He won't own it later.
He wants to prohibit these fruits that he does own on his friend, but it's not the fruits themselves, it's what they're exchanged for, and what grows from them. Can he prohibit that on his friend?
He owns it now.
He owns it now. So based on the last discussion, we would say that yes. It says Oy Dilma Mishum de Chilufen Kegidul Dami Leishnahu V'Leishna Chaveri. Gemara is accepting that the Gidulin are going to be prohibited.
Seems to me there should be a difference. There could be a difference between Gedulin and Khalifa based on the words.
Uh-huh. Because the Gidulin are Aser, and the exchange are like the Gidulin. Why is it so pashut that the Gidulin are Aser?
Isn't it just an accepted principle like the example you gave with Hektish?
I guess so. I guess it's pashut because of Hektish. That's what I marked down over here. Okay. So let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara says to answer this question, Amar Rav Acha bar min Yomi, Tashima. Rav Acha bar min Yomi says, come and listen. He's going to bring a proof. A husband tells his wife that it's prohibited for me to give benefits, to give benefits for you. So remember, we had a lot of discussion about this, that she would go to someone else and get food, and then the husband would pay it back. So here it says, Laiva, she borrows, and then the creditors come and they collect from the husband. She cannot have direct benefit from the husband, but she's allowed to borrow, and then they collect the debt back from the husband.
She uses her husband's credit card.
She uses her husband's credit card, right? My time, why does that work? Because Balichayvin, my time of Balichayvin, Nifrain, Balichayvin, my time Balichayvin Nifrain, Lav Mishum, the Chilufin, Lav Kigidulin Dami. Because it must be that what's exchanged is not like what grows. In other words, if the husband if she can have benefit from the growths of the fruits that the husband prohibited, right? Here the husband says she can't have any benefit, but let's say it would have been fruits that she can't have benefit from. She would have been prohibited from what grows from them as well. Now that it's being exchanged because she's taking fruits from someone else, and then those fruits are being paid for, exchanged, and that money is going back to the husband. So really what she's doing is she's getting the benefit from what's exchanged, from the exchange. And she wasn't supposed to be getting that benefit. It's just backwards, because usually what happens is there's fruits and then they get exchanged, and then she would get benefit from what's exchanged.
That's
Here, and then that was our question. But here what we're doing, what we're saying is okay, is she takes fruits that are no association with the husband, and then the husband pays for those fruits. So that money is being exchanged. So we're considering the exchange not to be going back there.
Oh, it's going to the husband.
The exchange is going to the person that she took the fruits from,
Right.
and it's not going directly to her. So we're not viewing the fruits as the exchange, and that's why she was allowed to have benefit. Which means that we're not viewing the fruits as the growth. Okay. Rava says maybe this is not a good proof. Dilma, maybe lechatchila hu delay. The avad. We're saying that over here we're going to accept this because we're dealing with the case where the wife needs to eat. So it's considered like a di'evid. And so we're going to allow the person that she took it from to be paid back by the husband. Ela tashema. Rather, we'll have another proof. It says, Kaddish, someone marries a woman, ba'arla, and he used fruits that were within the first 3 years.
Wow, that's crummy.
Wow, it's a double.
So the first 3 years, you're not allowed to benefit from those fruits.
Right, so what kind of a?
So it's Eina Mekudeshes.
Animate.
It's not married because that was not considered even money. It was nothing, right?
Nothing. Sure.
Machran b'kidesh b'demeyim. Let's say he sold the fruits. Now, he's not allowed to sell the fruits. He has to destroy them. They actually have to be burned. He sold the fruits, and then with the money that he got from the sale illegally, halachically, he then uses this money to marry a woman. Then he is married.
Wow, they don't know.
So what we're saying now is that what gets exchanged from something that's prohibited,
Right,
b'di'evid at least, is going to be permissible.
drug money.
Right. Gemara says, Hachanami, maybe the way we'll explain this also is that l'chatchila hu delay. He's not allowed to exchange it and use that money. The avad, but if he already did exchange it, and in this case he did, and he married a woman, then avad, then it would work. But we can't prove from this that chalipin itself is actually mutter. The exchange is actually mutter. Over here we're talking about that it was already used. We're going to say that it's effective, and we're going to say also that if in the case of the woman where she borrowed money and the husband has to pay it back, there we're going to say that because she needs to eat, we're going to say that the husband pays it back, and that's acceptable, but not that it's really chalipin is really permissible. Okay, so we don't have a proof from it. Let's leave it over here.
Wasn't these issues about like special to Kanas?
Yeah, I think so.